owls as big as this couch. I'll try.
You mean like the wings?
Yeah.
Okay, not like the body.
No, the wings. I'll come home and they'll be eating a raccoon. Just like.
Oh.
And there's seasonal buzzards or something, or big blackbirds that come in the mornings, and they stay in the trees, and then they leave, and then they come back every day for a couple weeks. And I've seen them just go down and pick up and rip a squirrel in two pieces. They just come down, and like the owls do the same thing.
Are you concerned about your cat?
No. Kitty cat comes in at night.
And they hunt it at night?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So these
I'm always concerned about my cats.
Yeah.
I just heard horrible stories about cats being picked up by owls.
Sure. Well, I have 3 parrots as well, and they go out in cages. And one day it was like this huge, birds were going crazy. And I go out there, and there's a red-shouldered hawk sitting on the top of their cage, just trying to, whacking his head at the bars. And so, because they're colorful, we have 2 green ones and then a scarlet macaw. And he's pretty big. He's like this big. And the hawks are like, this looks like tasty food. I've never seen a red bird this big before. So it's interesting.
Wow.
It's time?
It is time.
Okay.
That's
right. Time.
So welcome to the channel. This is 2 Floridian, and we're here with Jim
the camera.
with the camera over here, not over here where the monitor is. And we're speaking with Jim Webb, who has made many changes around Jacksonville. Many changes in my life were also in his establishments.
Yeah,
and
he pulled all his hair out because of
yeah. When we met, I had hair down to the middle of my back.
Yeah.
And Alexandra and Bill is with us. And some of this information is going to be new for her, but she's also met Jim Webb in her time here in Jacksonville, where he's been working with Manifest Distillery, and he's also worked to reform Hemming Park with Friends of Hemming Plaza. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
I guess we... just to give a quick background, I started working in Jacksonville in 1990. I came down here. I didn't know why, but I worked with AT&T, and we did internal projects, computer projects for AT&T. And
Rocket Man's beautiful, but maybe too much for our background.
Sure. And so we'd done a project internally, and we didn't know who the customer was. We were just given, this is the specs for this ginormous customer care computer system. And it turned out it was for Universal Card. And so AT&T Universal Card did one TV spot with their phone number. And it was during the Academy Awards in 1990. And it says, introducing the AT&T Universal Card. Back then, it was astounding in that it was a Visa or a MasterCard and then a calling card. So that when you went to a phone booth and you didn't have quarters, you could type in your code and it would then bill you. This was well before cell phones were everywhere. And so they said, call 1-800 AT&T something to get this new card. And it went from a couple million people to 15 million people or whatever it was. And so the computer system that we designed was woefully inadequate. And so I came down here, which was supposed to be a weekend. I got down here on a Thursday, and we were going to upgrade the system that weekend. And then I was going to go home. And so I flew down here with a couple T-shirts because I'm leaving New Jersey, and I'm going to Florida in September. And I remember getting off the plane, and just where the curve of the plane is and the jetway is and the blast of hot air, it was like, whoa, this is really hot down here. And so whatever. So I was told, leave the airport and go north to Bay Meadows. And so looked at a map and said, no, you don't go north to Bay Meadows, you go south. So drove to AT&T Universal Card, and it was, chaotic, to be polite. But my computers were there, and they were doing their job. But, their respect to do, let's say, 200 customer care agents. I don't remember, and I probably shouldn't give the details anyway, but there were like 5 times as many people tapping at it on these old screens with CRT screens and all this kind of stuff. And so we got there, we assessed what was going on, and this really sweet lady kept on bringing us pizza. And I realized at the end of the weekend, she was some vice president that if this didn't go well, she was going to be like, you know, just not happy. And so we basically worked, you know, overnight Friday and Saturday. And on Sunday, we turned it back on, and it worked. And so a friend of mine who came down with me with AT&T, we said, all right, let's go to Disney World. Let's celebrate. Let's have a real meal. So we drove from Jacksonville down to Orlando and went to one of the Pleasure Island restaurants that are now gone, and had an amazing seafood dinner, stayed overnight, went to the park on Monday morning, walked around, and then went to the Orlando airport. And no lie, it was one of those, you know, paging Jim Webb, please go to the nearest white courtesy phone or something. I'm like, that can't be for me. You know, like, what's going on? Anyway, so I went to the nearest white courtesy phone, and it was, you know, a call. Like, now someone would just call your cell phone. And it said, Jim, there's a problem. You need to go back to Jacksonville. So I said, okay. So we went, rented another car, drove back to Jacksonville. And long story short, the operators didn't know how to use the new system, and so it was glitchy. So that 4-day weekend, I stayed in Jacksonville from September, and I went back home in January. Okay. So I went and bought clothes. I was invited to the CEO's Christmas party, and it was a different Khan. He was K-A-H-N instead of K-H-A-N. And he was very particular. He wanted to make sure that he didn't look ostentatious. So his custom built house in Ponte Vedra was 9,999 square feet, not 10,000. And so I'm like invited to his party, and I have just jeans and t-shirts. I'm a tech guy. I don't have anything. So I went to the Orange Park Mall and rented a tux with a red cummerbund and all that. I don't know, it's a party. It's it's in a 9,000 square foot house. And so everyone said, well, Jim's sucking up, but Jim didn't have anything to wear. And I wasn't going to go buy a suit because I don't think I own a suit, you know, to this day. I have sport coats, but I don't have matching pants and a jacket. I just didn't know what to do. And so anyway, so I finally went back to New Jersey in January. And then I commuted for 4 years. So I worked down here at Universal Card with Transtech. And in 94, I moved here officially. And then most people don't remember this, but there was this looming Y2K issue where there were like 2 digits were the year. So when you went to 2000, it was 00. All my computer systems would think it was 1900.
I have a book called Spiritual Survival During the Y2K Crisis because I hung on to it thinking, oh, this is going to play out well. Sure. This is going to be a hilarious comedy afterwards.
Like I started with AT&T in 1983. And we had 1-digit years. There was a system that I was a system administrator on. I didn't design any of it, but they used 1 digit for the year. So when 1990 came around, we had to reset the date on that computer back to 89 just so it would work, because it would be negative. It would be like, oh, we're back in 1980 again. You know, what's going on? And so we were talking, what's going to happen in 2000? We were talking about this 10 years. And I was like, I'm not going to deal with this. I'm not going to deal with this. But so I retired from AT&T in 1999, and I say that, because I didn't want to deal with Y2K. So I retired in June of 1999. The real reason was that I was spending like half the year in class learning the next new thing that I had to do, and I still had to perform a year's worth of work with 6 months of class to learn the new work. Because like technology in the 80s and 90s were kind of like this, and then just like Moore's law. Every year it doubles. Well, after 16 years at AT&T, it hasn't doubled. It's 16x itself. I mean, the last computer I designed was for AT&T in Orlando, and it was the first computer that had a gig of memory in it, which our phones have 128 gig in them. And back then, a meg cost $1,000. So a gig was 1,000 megs. So a gig of memory cost $1 million. And it was on a board the size of 2 record albums with edge-mounted chips. So it was like 3 inches thick of individual chips. That today a gig is your fingernail on a $19 thumb drive. And so it was going crazy. And you're like, the people like $1 million for memory, but that was what it cost, Right. And so today, like, I have $250 million in my pocket,
computing power.
In computing power from the 1999. But as Bill knows, like in 1999 is when I opened Fuel Coffee House in 5 Points. And that was the reason I, segued from computers to hospitality and the service industry. I was like, all right, I can't keep up with the computer stuff. And I have friends that are still in the industry, and we talk all the time. Like, remember when we did this, and like some of the stuff we worked on, like we had this thing, it was called Project Liberty, and it was AT&T's purchase of McCaw Cellular. They were going to buy half of McCaw Cellular, and they also had AT&T Broadband, which was their internet offerings. And so I was involved in both of those projects where we were supposed to buy half of McCaw, and then Craig, I think it was his name, McCaw, was going to be, it was a stock. He was going to become like one of the biggest shareholders of AT&T. And I forget the AT&T CEO and president at the time. They decided, let's just buy the entire company. Now, I'd been tasked with finding office space for our half of it. And so, like, we found buildings, and we almost had signed leases. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, nope, we don't need to do that because we're buying the entire company, not just half of it. But our credo, and people looked at us like we were nuts. It was, what's wired will become wireless, and what's wireless will become wired. And they were like, so you're saying everyone's going to have a cell phone? And I'm like, yeah. Cell phones then were like $5,000, and they were the size of a textbook. And they had like a 2-hour battery, which added a whole nother thing to it. These Motorola
military operation just to use one.
Yeah, car phones were those things mounted on a stick, in the car with an antenna on the roof. Yeah. And so, but what it was is our thought process was, okay, cell phones are going to take over. But back then, most people got their TV over the airwaves. We're going to say entertainment's going to become wired to the house, and the phones are going to go away. And at one point, there was like, I remember growing up, we had like channels 2 through 13 on VHF, and then UHF, we had like 17 through 83. And
but they were frequencies.
Yes, they were frequencies that all of a sudden the spectrum god said, okay, we're going to take away these TV frequencies and we're giving to the cell phones. And so like all of a sudden, I think it dropped from like channel 83 to channel 72 or something, and those frequencies were then repurposed for cell phones. So if you're a nerd like I was, back when cell phones were analog, if you bought an old TV and you went up there, you could listen to people's cell phone calls because that was the frequency, and it was the same technology. It was analog, so you could listen in if you had an old TV.
You could still, until everything went to digital packets, you could go and get an old Nokia phone, and you could modify the old Nokia phones to just tune in on the frequencies too.
Yep. And so, all of that was going on, and now everything is going wireless. Internet, Comcast or AT&T is a fiber or a coax to the house. Now 5G technology, it's you can get internet like you use your cell phones.
Yeah, T-Mobile is offering a package. Verizon, all the wireless companies now offer home service.
Sure. And so, what's interesting is AT&T broadband became Comcast, and then McCall Cellular became AT&T Wireless. That then, at that point, we had the R box, and we don't want to bore anyone about like how you had local companies and long distance, and it all like when I joined AT&T, they had just done the consent decree because AT&T wanted to make computers, and to do that as a monopoly where they owned everything, from the the phone in your house to, whatever, they owned everything. They leased everything to you. And they said, in order to maintain the monopoly where you're the only phone company, you're not allowed to go into the computer business. And so the consent decree was, okay, if we split off long distance from local and allow MCI, Microwave Communications Incorporated or whatever, to offer long distance as an option. If you don't want to use AT&T, we'll let you go into the computer business. And so it was just chaos in 1983. And so you had, I worked with Bell Labs, then I worked with American Bell, and then that couldn't be called American Bell because Bell was only the R box. And so it was...
I like the Beastie Boys reference. Ma Bell. I got the ill communication, like Ma Bell.
Yeah, so it's all now back to, Verizon and AT&T. It's all coalesced, back into two companies. But anyway, I digress. So that was Jim circa 1999, and now Jim circa 2024. Started Fuel Coffee House. That's where we met. Took over the old Woolworths, or then Peterson's Five and Dime.
The Five and Dime was a massive warehouse that looked like a huge knick-knack shop. It was all like antique things, but there were just so many.
Sure.
In 5 Points?
Yeah, it was in 5 Points. It's where Hupdinger is now. And when we got it, it was filled with racks and racks and racks of just random stuff.
Right.
And random stuff would be like doll heads without matching bodies. I still have a New Kids on the Block birthday party invitation pack of like 12 cards. It was, it was 5,500 square feet on the first floor and about 5,000 on the second floor, slightly smaller. We ended up not being able to use the second floor because I couldn't afford to put a sprinkler system in, so we just used the first floor. It was a coffee house, then it turned into beer and wine later on, turned into a music venue. Turned back to fuel.
But it was always, hate to interrupt, but I got to mention it was more of a cultural epicenter at the time of a burgeoning area, because at this point when you opened up fuel, Riverside and 5 Points were considered undesirable areas where when I would go there, I was being rebellious with my, super conservative parents who were afraid of the people with the paper clips in their cheeks and the tattoos, and so people didn't...
The punks and the punk rockers.
Exactly.
Well, it's, Starbucks wasn't in Jacksonville at the time. I mean, it was like, there was a really cool independent coffee house at the Orange Park Mall, and we had Fuel, and... Like now, independent coffee houses are everywhere. It's like, I try to support them all. I try to go to Social House on my way in and see Mary Ellen, AB. I love the Greenhouse ladies down in Brooklyn. Downtown, we have Setland and we have Urban Grind. And
I don't think I've been to that first one. Setland?
Setland is now in Mocha. It's in the Museum of Contemporary Art. It's in their lobby. But it was a trendsetter. It's like I remember getting the restaurant certification, and they were like, well, you need a hood system. And I says, what for? He says, well, you have 2 grills. And they were panini grills. They were like toasters. And they had never seen a panini grill before. And so I had to explain that there's no smoke or grease-laden vapors coming off of the thing that you just, it's like a waffle iron that you just squish, your bread, and it puts grooves in it and heats your sandwich up. I'm like, oh, we've never seen one of those before. Panini grills, I mean, it's like, they're everywhere. But it was just, we did so many things that no one had seen before. Like I saw a grid where you took just metal electrical conduit and you screwed it into what's known as a quad box, and we made just a grid of outlets that we then hung from the ceiling so we could plug lights in and move them around. And I saw it in a magazine, and so I cut that out and I said, this is a cool idea. And when the electrical guy came in, they were like, what is this? And I explained it to him. And he was like, well, you have to do this, this, and this to make it up to code. Because what we did is we screwed chain into the ceiling and we brought it down, because the ceilings were 14 feet tall. Beautiful, pressed metal ceilings. And it hung, and basically there was a washer and a cotter pin that the chain went into this electrical box, and it hung there, and they were the same length of chain, so it was all level and all that. And he said, I need to put a cotter pin and a washer on the top so that if gravity inverted and this thing floated up to the ceiling somehow, the chain wouldn't fall into the electrical box and electrocute somebody or whatever. And so I was like, okay. You never say no to a government inspector. You just say yes. And so
I'm always glad to have something to do. I figure it gives me tacit acceptance that when it's done, I'll finally get my permit.
But he was like, and I've never seen one of this before. So I said, I showed him the picture. Well, that's not in Jacksonville, or that's not in Duval County. He was really steadfast about,
the high standards. Duval County.
And it's just, we all have these stories, and I'm not trying to insult anybody. It was just, it's just funny things you remember from 25 years ago. It's like at my house, we had to pull a permit to do something electrical, like a couple years ago. And I don't know how we were able to buy the house, but apparently there was an open permit for replacing the electrical box itself. And it went back to the previous owner. And so it was, I went on to COJ.net, typed in, and sure enough, there was a open electrical permit on the box that we had to have closed before we could do this electrical work. And so when I did it, the guy who was on the permit was now like a lead inspector, but he was just like a baby dude in the permit thing. And he came out and says, I want to see this, because I was the one that was supposed to do this 10 years ago. And on the ticket was Billy's cell phone number, which his wife still has. And he said, I remember calling Billy to say, hey, I need to come out. And for whatever reason, he wasn't home. And so we just, said we'll come back, and 10 years passed. I don't know how the title search didn't find that you had an open inspection on it, but the guy came out and talked about how, like, he remembered doing this and everything was fine. He just had to put the final check mark on it. And
Billy Powell from Leonard Skinner.
Yep. And I met him because of fuel, and that Ellen and the kids would come in, and I'm still great friends with them now because I bought his house. That's where I live now. And not random days, but random people come on, like the anniversary of the plane crash, and they take selfies in the front yard and just have, it's like Ellen's gave me a calendar of these are the times you'll expect to see people just randomly come to the house, and they still do.
Is it a lot of days in a year?
No, there's like 3 or 4. Like.
Do you plan to be not at home?
No, I mean, I don't even, I like to say, who needs, just one full-time job? So I have lots of avocations. So I'm home But I remember driving in one afternoon, and there were some people just taking a selfie by the front door with the address in the back and all that. But it's fun.
Have you seen that house?
No, I haven't.
We'll have to have you out.
Yeah, we should ask for that calendar, because I'm absolutely ignorant in that sense about the important dates.
So I met. What happened when Jim opened Fuel is, at this point in Jacksonville, when you would go just about anywhere, they want you to buy something or move on. There's not really, even the bookstores, you can sit in them for a while and read books, but it wasn't like a community area.
I see what you mean.
So what Jim had made, along with this, conversion to Fuel, is he was the first guy to encourage people to stay. They could do work. They could do their own interviews there. Everything was available because he had a massive space that he tended to. And he made it open to everybody, and people would come in morning, noon, and night. I was definitely in that group. I would be there at any given time. You could find me at Fuel.
We as I said, about 5,000 square feet. Bought some new furniture for like the seating, like the table seating area, but everything else I went to just random used furniture stores. Budget furniture is still open on Powers, and I went in there and just bought random couches and random seats, and they had like this crazy, like 5 foot tall plush high heel shoe that was had leopard print on it, and so
looked like this stiletto
for like the Jaguars. It was like gold and teal and all that, and so we bought that, and people fought over sitting on some of these chairs and all that. It was very eclectic.
Yeah, that went really well when we did a Friars roast for a good friend who we didn't tell him. We just put up posters that we were going to have the event, so he learned about it by seeing his own bad photo on a poster.
Yeah.
And then we had everybody at Fuel do a wonderful Friars roast of a dear friend.
Like we did everything ourselves. Like I look back, we did a 5 Points fashion show, and all we did is we went to Home Depot and bought sheets of plywood and like just made a run, like a runway, like 18 inches off the floor out of 4x4s and some 2x6s, and didn't even paint it, and we gave out the Kodak disposable cameras to people, and so they took their pictures with these disposable cameras, and then we took them to the Walgreens or the CVS to get developed, because we didn't have cell phone cameras and all that, and so I have banker boxes full of film of stuff that I should scan, and just the technology today, like everywhere you're going, whatever. But back then, you didn't have things in your phone because you didn't have, like you had a flip phone maybe by that point in time. A friend of mine
would take horrible photos indoors, period.
But in the beginning, they weren't even.
And you had maybe 30 people you could put in your contact.
Yeah, it'd be like a 16 pixel image. Like it wouldn't show anything if you tried to take a photo.
Yeah, it was fun. It's funny because like a friend of mine,
you had to actually go out and meet people to talk to them.
Sure. Well, like we had this giant, countertop thing. It was like the size of a microwave oven, and you'd put dollars in it, and then you could play solitaire on it, and you'd pay to play solitaire. That's all on your phone now. Like the we call it the crack machine, because people would just put money in it and had a touch screen. It was so fancy, and now that's all in your phones. Because I was thinking that'd be fun to have one of those. And then Jonathan said, Jim, everyone has on their phone. They're not going to pay $1 to play, a video game. Like, I know. I guess I don't play enough solitaire on my phone. But we had a good time.
And then it culminated to a point where anybody was there. So there was another whole phase where, on top of all the people that you knew that were influential in how the internet now works and operates through the monolithic companies that made it so, this progressed into where I met George Clinton. Got to hang out with him while he was waiting on his show, and kept saying he knew when it was time. Even though I was thinking, man, all these people are going to stay? This is like crazy, and it just got more and more packed. And John Popper turned up just at the show. The Blues Traveler.
George played shows at Fuel a couple times, and one time he was supposed to play, and he called me. He said, "I'm sorry, I can't do it, and you're going to be really upset for the reason why." And I was like, "All right." And he says, "Because I've got a better offer that night at a different venue in Jacksonville, who we won't name, but we just used he and a couple players, but the other venue offered the full 30-piece, thing." And so I was like, well, just as long as I have unlimited free tickets to go to the show in a bar tab, I'm not going to be mad at you. I've scanned some of those pictures, but George is a wonderful person. I don't think he really knew me well. He knew me as Cheesecake because he loved my cheesecakes. And
you baked?
He always had amazing food.
Yeah,
so the food was awesome.
Yeah, we had
really good.
like a really great dessert menu, and it was made by a series of people that are still in the industry making desserts today. But
and your chicken salad sandwich taught me a thing or two about how chicken salad sandwiches could be made.
Yeah, I think about that. It was it started off as cranberry dill turkey salad, and then it was just so much work to roast turkeys that we just decided to go to cranberry dill chicken salad, and I still make it every now and again.
But you also had food sourcing was good, and the food quality was really good. Back when 5 Points was not like a food destination like it is now.
It's like the kitchen area was just like a 8-foot wall, so it was open. So if you did anything in the kitchen, you could hear it everywhere. And so we'd try to, we would make hummus in a Vitamix, and it's loud. And people, like if I was making hummus at 11 in the morning, the place is full of people, it really was distracting. So we tried to do it early in the morning, but, sometimes we just couldn't. And, this one guy, I was in the kitchen and I just heard something like, yell the blank, shut the blank up and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, sorry. But we had a really good vegetarian options back before they were as common as they are today. We had soy milk before it was common, that type of stuff. We trend set a bunch of stuff.
So this is my question. How did you pivot from AT&T or anything related to like a coffee shop?
Because I loved coffee houses up in New Jersey, and I didn't see one down here that I wanted to go to. And I saw the promise of 5 Points. I took a picture and I've scanned it. I put it online, and it's like I just walked down the street on one side and took a picture of the other, and then did the same thing. And so I have this panorama of what 5 Points was like back in the day, and it was so eclectic. Edge City was and still is there, but then we had so many fun places like Chris and Daisy. He had Fusion Cafe before I got there. We had it was all locally owned businesses, and it was just someone saying, "I'm going to do this."
Reflections was like a local tailor that would take like nightclub clothes, but then they'd make them custom fit to you and change them and modify.
Then you had Basil next door, that was the custom tailor for people from Ortega that needed their suits taken out. Do you dress right or left was a question type of a thing. But it was a traditional tailor, but we had, Edge City, Chris and Daisy opened up Milo.
Wall Street Lounge was Wall Street Lounge until just recently.
But
it was
at Adcock's Costumes, we had Starlight.
Club 5.
Club 5.
5 was this
Saturday
nightclub
Night Seduction.
Yeah, with his objective, Bruce Chambers' point was that he wanted it to be like Studio 54
Mm-hmm.
in New York, and he did everything in his power to make that club as glamorous and debaucherous as he possibly could. Hope he's partying somewhere now.
Yep.
Because he's not with us anymore.
No, he had an unfortunate death. But there was crazy stuff, and people just threw spaghetti on the wall, see if this is going to work or not. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes you wish it didn't work. When they started having the patron boxing scene, where they put a boxing rink made out of plywood, not bouncy, and you could, after a couple drinks, if you decide that you wanted to box, you could, and there were
comically oversized boxing gloves, which did help.
Yeah, but
minimize a bit of the damage.
Yeah, but then like dudes are wont to do, if you lost inside, you waited outside for the winner, and before they filled in the parking lot between the Derby House and Wall Street, we would just look, and there would be then patron bare knuckle boxing, in the parking lot. Oh, this isn't going to do well. This isn't going to do well.
Yeah, those days were definitely different.
Yeah. But Sunray is amazing, in that space now.
Yeah.
And I believe they're expanding somewhere. They tried to expand into a closed Kmart or Sears off of San Jose Boulevard, and then what I call the dark times happened, and that didn't happen. But I think I read that they're expanding somewhere else and having a multiplex. And Tim and his wife just have a huge amount of films that they've personally owned, and they've created that secret sauce of, okay, we can have some cult films or some indie films, but we'll still have the blockbusters and all that. And of course, the dark times changed, movie going, but they seem to still figure out how to be a profitable business by catering to.
That's great.
Yeah,
too. Don't
exactly.
Their food is really good.
Right.
Really good, yeah.
They have a chicken sandwich that I would get at any given time.
You're hungry. You keep talking about food.
I know, it's fun. But yeah, it's 5 Points has certainly it's we were accused of gentrifying the space in that we went in and were loud at night and had people around the doors when we turned it into more of a music venue.
I remember a lot of the old punk gang being really upset, and they'd be like, "This is all going to drive the prices up." I'm like, "You're upset that people are going to want to come here, and then there'll be more of this." I'm like, "I think you just need to earn some money and stop being a gutter punk."
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah. I mean, it was fun. We built a stage for open mic nights and all that, and they were wonderful. I mean,
it feels like there was something for everybody in the scene, and there still is. And there's so much going on that started then that's carried on as a legacy, I think, up to now.
Well, it's funny. It's the poetry nights and the open mic nights were. All I did is open the door and said, "Who wants to run this?" And there was Raven and his wife. This was one of the first places that had handicap accessible bathrooms, and so she was and still is in a wheelchair, in a scooter, and she was like, "This is the first place I can go where I can use the bathrooms," because this was in the 90s. They weren't yet required.
Right.
I mean, and this was one of the years where they were. And so, of course, we built, we wanted to be open to everybody. So, and we couldn't open without them, but we built very expensive, handicap accessible bathrooms.
Beautifully graffitied as well.
Yes.
They were massive. You had lots of space.
Yeah, but she and Raven and the whole group always took over the seats around the round table up by the stage when they ran it. And I mean, Kareem was there. Al Letson was there.
Miguel Alvarez.
Miguel. I'm thinking I could Shelton Hull. Lots of Alan. Not Ginsberg, obviously, but the amazing literary minds of Jacksonville went there. I think it was every Thursday, and it was. Sometimes it would be I'm the first time I've ever read a poem, or this is the first thing I've ever written, and they'd get up with trepidation, and there'd be
Stephen Adair did a whole play, didn't he?
He had Boomtown, and so he was never involved in Fuel. We knew of each other, but he was doing his stuff down in Springfield, and also where Dalton Agency is now. He had the Dalton Agency building off of then Hemming
I
Park.
thought before that he did a play up at Fuel as well.
No,
Adam and Steve, but maybe that was somewhere.
Nope, that was
That was Boomtown.
that was he wasn't involved in that. The guy from Boomtown was in it, who's now out in Tallahassee.
I see. Okay.
Stephen.
Who was it that did that play? Because that seemed like that also got quite a bit of attention.
It was the people that had the theater in the building on King Street that's across from it's next to the Burger King. It's now a one of Scott McAllister's places, but there was a community theater in there, and when that went away, we let them do it at Fuel.
Okay.
But it's now one of Scott McAllister's bars. It's right on the corner of King and Post.
Garage.
Across the street from the garage. It was supposed to be an Irish pub or something, or a Scottish pub or Irish pub. Yeah, that's tiny, tiny little place. I've only been in there once.
Next to the first Burger King.
Yeah, one of the first. What's crazy is like King Street back then had Park Place had moved from Park Street down to where it is today, and Scott hadn't started his things. Steve Flores hadn't started Kickbacks, and it was a rough place. It's like King Street and Park Street were.
It was a lot of little corner shop type places, and
there was a lot of
one thing
street selling of all kinds of stuff in both places, and you bring commerce, and it will displace some crime and increase others. It's like I was accused of bringing robberies to 5 Points because people started getting robbed. But I was like, I hate to tell you this, but you weren't robbed before because nothing was successful on this block. Now that, Wall Street was always successful. Edge City always was successful, but new places came and took over spots.
Those don't have a huge amount of cross traffic.
Right. And
you brought people that weren't just coming to buy coffee. They were buying coffee and going up and down the street.
Yeah. Yep. And we supported up and down the street. I mean, I don't know how many random Italian things I got from Gus, and we did, Tammy's shop, Theory Shop. She started Einstein's A Go-Go out at the beach,
And then opened up a shop down the street.
Down the street from us. And so when I had Rhiannon do Bitchy Bingo, which is a total riff on Hamburger Mary's, but there wasn't a Hamburger Mary's in town yet. And so we would buy the prizes from Tammy. So it was like Theory Shop prizes for, Rhiannon's bingo. And, we just had fun. It was such a fun place.
And you had a lot of backlash too from parts of the community as well, some conservative components. And you continue to represent, I think, a place where where everybody could meet regardless of their political opinion.
Oh yeah, I mean, we were definitely attractive to a lot of the. I don't want to say like younger, but like when we were just a coffee shop, there was no beer or wine. When we added that, that did change the mix a little bit, but we never turned anyone away. We encouraged it. In fact, a gentleman was doing a book tour of places that were open to the gay community. And he asked me a question that resonates to this day. And he's like, where did they go before you opened? And I was like, Jasmine had just started. Like, we now have lots of places where, the gay, lesbian, transgender, I don't want to be exclusionary, but like, for me, it was LGBT. Now it's LGBTQI and all that, and that's great. I embrace it all, but I'm not up on the lingo. But like, we had drag queens in there, we had butch lesbians, we had butch gay people, we had trans people. We just were a melting pot, and we had a ton of straight people that were just, wow, this is amazing,
And events where people from both sides of the aisle would come and talk as well.
Sure.
And Christian groups as well met there.
Oh, yeah.
There was one particular priest that used to come regularly and hold service there.
Oh.
We hosted some really fun philosophy slams where we they were put on by JU, UNF, and FCCJ at the time, now FSCJ. And I remember one of them, we almost started a riot, and it was on a Wednesday night, and the guy running it went up and said, okay, we're going to discuss a topic. And the topic was, democracy is a failed system. And the whole place went crazy. And I think, given our current situation, it's very telling. But all these college kids just started yelling, that's how can you say that? That's ridiculous. And he said, and as I said, this was on a Wednesday, and he says, okay, calm down. Let me ask a follow-up question then. How many people voted yesterday? Because yesterday was Tuesday for local elections. It wasn't a presidential race. It was just local, and your congressman and maybe your senator, but it wasn't a presidential every 4 years. And the place went dead silent. Like 10% of people voted, and it was just, so let's talk about this philosophically. You don't run for president as your first job.
Right.
Like, everything starts locally. Like, no one rises to the power of running for president unless they've done stuff locally, statewide, nationally, and then the president. And it was just one of those truth bombs that, I hope resonated with them, that you got to be involved in local politics. And, one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm the executive director of the Jacksonville Naval Museum, which is the group that bought the former USS Orlick, which is a 391-foot naval destroyer that was built in 1945, and it's now across the street from Manifest. Like my sister told me once, like, a boat is a hole in water in which you pour money. And so she said when she sold her 24-foot sailboat, that she saved so much money. And she goes to me, and so you and your friends bought not a boat, but a 391-foot long naval ship. And I'm like, yeah. And like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? Well, we've been trying to get a naval ship open as a Navy museum, here for years, and we finally did it, and it's here now. And I have no idea why I brought that up, but I lost the topic.
But I think that's a great deviation, because it brings what you did up to now in a way, because we're talking now about things that are changing the face of Jacksonville and how you continue to just come up with something innovative to bring to the city.
Well, can you say a little bit more about Manifest?
Manifest. Okay, well, Manifest was founded by a really good friend of mine, David Cohen, and we like to stylize the concept of Manifest in, David said, I'm either going to open a juice bar or a distillery. Who wants to help me with which
Wow,
concept?
okay.
And I guess everyone went with the distillery. So he opened it up. Build out of Manifest started in 2015, and I was still working with Friends of Hemming Park at that point in time. It opened in 2016. We like to joke that, like, you can't buy a still on Amazon and have it, brought to you by a drone. And so, like, there are these amazing lead times on everything. Like, we ordered the still from Vendome, which is the oldest distillation company in the United States. They make everything by hand in Kentucky out of copper and stainless steel. And they said, okay, there's a 11 to 13 month lead time on what you want. But feel free to give us a 50% down. It takes a year to get all the licensing. And so David was very confident that everything was going to work. But it's funny things. It's like, back to inspectors. In the state of Florida, it's illegal to own a still without a license. You can make beer at home. You're not allowed to make whiskey or vodka or gin at home. But in order to buy a still, you need to be inspected. And so it's like you have to own the still illegally so that the inspection can happen for you to get the license to own the still. So it's like one of these.
Yeah.
And of course, since you're filing all this paperwork, they know what you're doing. But if you hadn't started to file all the paperwork and, inspector comes and looks through the window and sees distillation equipment and looks at the address and see no permit is in process, that's, a bad thing. But, so that Manifest, people ask where the name came from.
That was my next question.
We've always wanted to be local, like David was born here. We want to embrace the fact that it's in Jacksonville. All our labels say, made in Jacksonville, Florida. But we also wanted to be able to sell in other markets. It's like we're distributed statewide in Florida, in Georgia, in Tennessee, in South Carolina, New York, and Illinois right now. And we felt if we said we were Jacksonville Distilling, there's no cachet to that outside of Jacksonville. We proudly say we're made in Jacksonville, but we came up with Manifest because we liked all the definitions of the word, the noun and the verb.
Okay, that was my third question.
Yeah, like Manifest is a list of a bill of lading or a list of what's on a ship, for example. What's on give me your ship's manifest. And it's just a list of everything there. You can also manifest something. I can manifest change. I can create something. And one of the conceits of Manifest is hire people smarter than you, because we don't want to have to know how to do everything. So we hired this great designer who came up with our labels and our logo, the M with all of the sticks. And everyone thinks it's a riff on the bridge, out the the Dames Point Bridge,
Okay,
Robert Broward, whatever, Bonaparte Broward Bridge, because it's a suspension bridge and it looks like that RM, but she had never seen the bridge. And what she came up with is if we manifest a product and we all work together, we create this M. But if we all don't work together, then all those random or those different levels of sticks are just a pile on the floor. Like the sum is greater than the parts. And so it's all about manifesting a great product. And we try to source things as locally as possible. There are no bottle manufacturers in Jacksonville, but we use lots of local printing companies for work, for specialty labels. We did a lot of fun stuff early on with Congreve and Penn, some collaborations and all that. Obviously, we hire local people. Somewhat inobvious to the viewing world, we are closed for the next week or so because a building across the street from us, a 8-story building, catastrophically caught on fire on Sunday night.
I saw that.
And so our block is, I like to be dramatic and say we've been condemned, but it's just code enforcement has said it's unsafe to be there because this 8-story building could collapse on ours at any point. So this morning they were starting the demolition of that building.
Gosh, and it was almost finished.
It was almost finished, and just tragedy. I don't know what happened, but the entirety of the building,
luckily it was vacant.
Yeah, it was vacant. Yeah. No one was living in it, but the fire department's been called a couple times to spray water on the walls to push them inward as opposed to them crashing into the street. So they bring these trucks that do 5,000 gallons a minute or something like that of water, just spraying on the building to keep it from falling. And so a demolition company was going in today to start assessing how to tear it down. So we hope to be open again, next week. And people are not, it's too soon, but people are saying, are you going to have a fire sale? Are you going to do like a barrel based upon this? And like, no, we're not. It's tragedy.
Yeah.
It's going to be a setback because this building has been under construction since 2020,
4 years, 5 years.
Yep. And it was going to house 400 people in the sports district. And so it's a business setback for us, which is, I'm not going to be, woe is me, being closed for a week or two. We can weather that storm. But it's set back, the momentum of people moving downtown. Yeah. So 400 people aren't moving downtown now. 400 people aren't living 50 feet from my door.
Right.
I mean, we had plans that once that was open to expand our cocktail room and all that because there were going to be people living next door. And I'm not saying woe is me. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to say this is all about me. It's like this other company has invested $60 million into this, and they're now dead.
And it's all a tragedy of the destruction anyway. Right. I mean, it's such a waste.
Right. And let's hope that they said like they're going to rebuild, but it's set back things, years. Yeah. And I'm not complaining about that. I'm just so disappointed that our city is set back. And it was about politics, is why I brought up the Orlick, local politics. So yesterday, we had the mayor on the ship. First time she had been on the ship as the mayor. When they were running for mayor, she came to a Vietnam veterans thing that we had on the ship, but she was on the ship yesterday. And she was like, this is a great activation of downtown. It's like it's on a pier that wasn't used. And so that's why I brought up the ship, because we were talking about local politics and the philosophy slams and all that. And it's all about local. I mean, Rise, which is the company that built this building, they were based in Georgia, and they moved their headquarters to Jacksonville because they saw all the opportunity they could have as a small construction company and building stuff here in Jacksonville. Lots of people are moving here. But it's all about the local, and politics is part of the local. So, Manifest is local. The ship is local.
I love that. And you also collaborate with artists, no, for your covers, for your labels from time to time? We
did a thing with Brunette Garcia that was beautiful, and it released right during all the pandemic, and so we never got any traction out of it. Right, but it was a 5-bottle set. The bottles had clear labels, and each bottle was a different local artist. And it was on the front label was a mask, and when you looked through the bottle, the back of the label was the face. And so when you turned the bottle around, you saw a inverted face, but if you turned it right around, you saw the character, I can never pronounce it right, but it's the Comedy d'arte, but it was like one of the first theater pieces done back in the day. And so each one we had our vodka, citrus vodka, gin, barrel gin, and rye whiskey. And it was 5 half bottles with each had a different face on it. So maybe we can redo that at some point, but it was a great project for that. We did a really fun project where we bought 1.75 liters of big bottles, like the handles, and we taped off an area on it on the bottom of the bottle, and we took it to one of the glass guys at JU, and he sandblasted the bottle. And then we gave each bottle to a different artist that they painted on the bottle, and that was for a fundraiser for the Cultural Council. And so it was our Florida citrus in there, and then each bottle was unique. We did 24 of them, and raised around $5,000, if I'm remembering right. I think they were $200 was the opening bid for them. And they were fun because, like, some people glued stuff on them, some people painted them, some people took newspaper and made collages. Everyone was unique. Yeah. And the only thing that was consistent was where it wasn't sandblasted is where we put the label, because you have to have a legal label on it. You know, you can't just have a bottle without the alcohol percentage, and don't drink this while operating a forklift pregnant and all that. Those warnings on it and all that. So, but yeah, we try to do as much with
or pregnant forklift.
Yeah, pregnant forklifts, they're grouchy. But Manifest has expanded to the point where we're now renting a external building. Luckily, we had moved a lot of the barrels there before the unfortunate fire, but we rent it from Rethreaded, so we're helping them out by renting a building that they own but they don't use, and so we're leasing that from that. Okay. So we're supporting Rethreaded by being on their campus, and so that's where we store our barrels in our offsite stuff.
And what is your official title or role within Manifest?
It's segueing right now, in that I was the general manager, and I was a partner, but I don't like to have just one full-time job. So I'm full-time at Manifest. I'm full-time at the ship. I'm now segueing to managing and owning a sports bar at the Community First Igloo. It's a 193-seat restaurant, and it's between two hockey rinks. And so Manifest has been partnered with the Icemen, which is the local hockey team.
Did you get hot one day and decide in this adventure?
Yeah, and so this is why I wear my Fernet Branca hoodie all the time, because
I heard we go through more of that than any other place.
We certainly do, but and so it's a sports bar. It has a screen that's slightly smaller than the screen Fuel had. And it has like 20 TVs, full bar, and there's this term called Tide House of Evil, where if I'm an owner of Manifest, I can't own a restaurant that sells it. And segueing out of that, and so in a couple months, I won't have /partner behind me at Manifest anymore. I'll still be a vice president of something or a general manager of something, but I don't think I ever had a title that I ran by. I was like, all right, let's do this. Let's help this nonprofit. Like, we run the Sip and Strolls for Downtown Vision the third Thursday of every month. We help with their galas. We do offsite bars for Rethreaded, or I'm a supporter of the Florida Theater, and so the Remedy Lounge has Manifest products, and then I'm also personally a supporter of the theater, and so Manifest does events all the time offsite for nonprofits. Like, we support the Boys and Girls Clubs, whether it's like setting up a bar or donating for silent auctions. The Dolores Bar Weaver Policy Center, I've known their emeritus CEO, LaWanda Rivora, for 25 years, and she's since retired from running that, but we do See the Girl Day. We support a lot of nonprofits. Jasmine, Feeding Northeast Florida. We're working with trying to figure out how to do something in the Phoenix Arts District. But there's also stuff that you have to be cognizant about, is that I know I'm a white-haired white dude, and I'm going to put a business in a not white-haired white dude environment. It's a very African-American community, and I don't want to look like I'm coming in and making money off of a community. I want to go in and make money with and for the community. And, you know, a lot of these, you know, disaffected communities have been affected by alcoholism. And I mean, I want to go in there and do something that doesn't exacerbate that. And I'm talking with a couple people about, well, let's do like an urban farm in there where we can, you know, in a restaurant that like the food is grown in the community. And also like not just like herbs and whatever, but like I'm working with this guy who's just so passionate about it. But he said, Jim, we got to plant nut trees. And I'm like, what? He says, we need to plant pecans and like, you know, whatever's, and it'll take 15 years, but then we'll have sustainable, you know, stuff in this neighborhood. In the meantime, we can plant, you know, carrots around them or whatever. But like, let's create an urban food forest. And it's just like brilliant. And we'll serve some alcohol, you know, and some great food. Once again, like, I'm totally obsessed with this open pit barbecue concept that I've seen and I've gone to, and it's just amazing. But it's never been done in Jacksonville, so I'm sure the fire people are going to be freaking out. I mean, it's like when Ember and Iron opened, they had a custom grill made, and they had to go through this crazy chaos of getting the appropriate hood system built for it because it had never been done before. And so
Duval County's all about hoods.
Yes, it's all the hoods.
They must be sponsored by hoods.
Yeah. But I look back at this and it's like, wow, we did a lot of firsts, you know, and continue to do so. Like, we're the first, like we joke when people complain about something on the Orlick, the ship, and like, well, who else has brought a retired naval warship to Jacksonville? Show me the best practices manual on how to do this and all that. And so,
do you have to have a firearm license for that?
Well, that's an interesting question, because the 5-inch guns, you know, the guns that when the mayor was in there, we have a map of where this gun could fire, and it can fire all the way out to 295. And she was like, what? But until very recently, they still worked. And every year, for ease of discussion, the ATF guy would come out to where it was previously in Louisiana and say, have you drilled through the thing yet? And they'd say no. Because they still move and they still work. Yeah. And we would joke, well, where are we going to get the bullets for it? And the Jim walked down one ladder and you have them.
Walmart doesn't carry those?
Well, no, but we have them on the ship still. We have the bullets.
Oh my God.
And they weigh about 40 pounds, and they'll make a hole in something or dig a big hole in the ground or knock down a building. But the USS New Jersey, which is a battleship from the World War II era, and it also, I believe, fought through Vietnam. It has 5-inch guns and 16-inch guns in this, and it's still owned by the Department of Defense. It's on permanent loan to the nonprofit that runs the USS New Jersey Naval Museum. And what they're able to do is, for $500, you can put the wadding in the 5-inch gun, and no armament, just the casing. And they aim it out over the Delaware River at something that's not going to get hurt if they get hit by this cotton wad. And for $500,
you can airsoft it.
You can fire the gun.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I know no one in the South would want to do this. I can't imagine that there anyone that likes guns that would pay $500 to fire a 5-inch gun. Obviously, I'm joking. There'd be a line. We would be having noise complaints all the time. But the reason
it's far more likely.
But it would be fun to, like, you know, start off New Year's or the 4th of July parade or Veterans Day parade or whatever, like this big.
Especially if you could probably burn the wadding too.
Yeah. So,
Like
but the reason
ball of wadding.
Yeah, the reason that the USS New Jersey can do it, because it's still owned by the Department of Defense and it's on permanent loan to this nonprofit. So the DoD has the federal firearms permit to do that. We actually bought the ship, so we own the ship. It's not on permanent loan from anybody.
So you have literally the biggest gun of anybody I know.
And it's since been bored out, so it won't fire. But
you had to drill the holes.
yeah, we had to drill the holes. We had to pour concrete in the torpedo tubes, so we couldn't launch a torpedo. I mean,
You're really knocking down your ambitions for this ship.
yes, but it turns out that I met a gentleman in town who has the federal firearms permit that would be legal for firing a 5-inch gun. And he said, if all we want to do is shoot blanks out of it, we can, you know, solder those holes shut. And so he's investigating getting us that license.
I like that their rules are kind of like, you know, put an orange cap on the tip of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You should paint the tip orange.
Yeah, there we go. But it's funny. It's like, so the ship has 2 dual 5-inch guns that move and all that. We're going to get one so that we can fire it.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
What's crazy, too, is there's a system on the ship. It's called the ASROC, and that's an anti-submarine rocket. And it's a bank of 8 tubes that a rocket would go in. And we had to take the rails off of that so that we couldn't shoot a rocket. And I'm like, now I know I don't have one of them anywhere.
Yeah.
But what's crazy to me is in 1958, the USS Orlick went to the Marshall Islands and it witnessed and recorded and took notes on 7 nuclear explosions. So it was there for 7 nuclear tests.
Is the ship slightly radioactive?
I haven't taken it. I haven't done that. I severely hope that was checked long beforehand. But
I got a camera you might need to borrow. It'll connect to, well, you use an iPhone, so I think it'll work.
Yeah, but this ASROC system that they put in the 70s had 2 armaments. It was a rocket base that they'd bolt a torpedo to the front of, and it would shoot it off a couple extra miles. Then it had what most people call
just like the head of the rocket.
Yeah, it's just a rocket booster with a torpedo, like that could disconnect from the rocket and go in the water. They also had a depth bomb version of it, or a depth charge, and it was a little guy that sat on the front of the rocket, and it got fired about 4 miles away, where it exploded. And it was used twice in training only, and it was a 10 kiloton depth bomb that exploded. It would evaporate a 1.5 mile sphere of the ocean.
Jeez.
And so the edge of the ocean was 3.5 miles from where it was launched. And and like the saying, you know, close only works in horseshoes, hand grenades, and nuclear weapons. Like, you just needed to get it close to the submarine that you didn't want around you anymore. But then you also were like 3 miles from the edge of a nuclear explosion. So if they ever were to fire that in wartime, the protocol was everyone got inside the ship, they battened down all the hatches, they dropped all these curtains because the blast would blind you. They fired it, and then for a day or two, these sprinkler systems just would wash the ship because it would be radioactive dust from the cloud would be coating the ship. And you just stayed inside for 2 days.
Just drops a nearby nuke. That does not sound like a good defense strategy. It's like a lizard dropping its tail. It's less than ideal.
Yep.
It might work, but it's less than ideal.
But if you Google ASRock, ASROC, there's a video of one of the tests, and it's awe-inspiring. Like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's, oh my God, this is insane. It's like this thing just goes up.
It's like surf the wave out.
Yeah, well, it's like it just like encompasses ships. That they'd empty ships they put out out there, and 10 kilotons, tiny. It's not a mega whatever that have bazillions of on top of ICBMs and all that. It's a tactical nuke. Didn't need the president. If the commander or the captain of the ship or the launch officer said, this is what's going on, they probably called the White House and said, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, that's a heck of a scorpion tail.
But it's not like you had two guys standing on like 8 feet apart. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and turning a switch, which I'm sure they don't do anymore. But that's how I grew up on. Like this is how these two
Red October,
and then opening up a cookie and reading off something. It was all local control. It's like in one of the officers' quarters, I thought this was the payment officer because you paid the guys on the ship weekly in cash. We didn't have Visa cards or anything electronic in the 40s, 50s, and all that. And there's a safe in one of the officers' cabins, and I figured, I guess this is where they kept the money. He's like, no, this is where they kept the firearms and the launch code to launch the nuclear weapons. And so it's like you still had to put a firing key in there that said this is going to authorize it.
Oh, we should go to this museum.
It's fun. We're open Wednesday through Sunday. We fix everything that broke on Monday and Tuesday, then reopen on Wednesday. And we just got the birthing compartments ready, and I just recertified through the FDLE so we can do the background checks on people, so that we will be offering, probably starting in the spring, sleepovers where Cub Scouts can come and bring their sleeping bags and sleep in the racks. And it's really interesting because the ship, as I said, was built in the 40s, and back then the average height of a sailor was 5'6", 5'8". So the ceilings are really low. In the racks, I'm like this much of my feet hang off the end, but it's perfect for like kid size. And so we've, been having lots of people ask, when can we? And there's a lot of reasons for the when can we's, but the main one was that the birthing areas were hadn't been touched, since, the 80s. And so we took out all the racks. They sleep 3 high on like bunk bed cots and all that. Sandblasted out everything, repainted everything, put down new flooring. Went and washed the racks because they're canvas that's just stretched, and it looks beautiful. And so that was one of the things we were really proud to show the mayor yesterday. And so it's just really pretty, and it will be the first time that room or that compartment is air conditioned. But it would get over 100 degrees because it's sitting right next to the engine rooms. And,
I see.
And so it's all steam powered, so it would get really hot down there. But it would also get really hot in the summer just sitting here in Jacksonville. So we'll put air conditioning in. That's going in next week sometime. What's interesting about the ship is the majority of it is running on the original wires and all the electrical from the 40s. So, but they didn't have 240-volt split units back then, and so we're on new electric for all of the new air conditioning and all that. But all the lights in the ship are running on the power that was installed 78, 79 years ago.
It's amazing. I really can't wait to see that, Jim.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm on the ship every day, and I see something that just tickles me every day. It's and we've done so much with it. Like we've restored the mess areas and all that. There were 335 men on the ship. Everything was manual. The computer that targets all the guns is like a computer today, there would be a formula. All right, this is the formula for.
It's an Antikythera mechanism.
It's all dials, and it's basically it's gears that create that formula. It's like you dial in something that says, okay, my target is 2 miles from here, and so the range is 2 miles, and then it says, okay, if the gun is going up at this angle, it will shoot 2 miles, and then when you do both of those, then it says, okay, we have a solution. That's all with a computer with software, but it's a hardware computer,
Right.
and it weighs something like 4,000 pounds or whatever. And I look at it every day and move this, and I think it's cool, and the kids love it. Like, what do you mean? Like, I can do this on my phone,
Right.
But
He's like, I'm targeting the Bank of America tower.
yeah. Well, we look right at the old school board building, so we could say we can knock it down for you when you want, when you're out of it, and it's going to go condo. But
That'd be great. You could use it to demolish other buildings.
Yeah, nice.
You get a permit to demolish the building next to the Manifest.
Yeah, it's
via battleship.
Well, we joked that we would take the Berkman 2 down for free, but they imploded that. But yeah, so that's had a great visit with the mayor yesterday. We've had lots of city council members on it, lots of tours. We've had several weddings.
How interesting.
Battleship wedding.
Yeah,
Very cool.
we had one when she got here was in the news, and a dude called. He was living somewhere in Colorado, and he told me that he served on the ship from 1967 to 1971, and then he got married in 1972, and could he do his 50th wedding vow renewals on the ship? And I said, of course you can.
That's so cool.
So he and his family drove from Colorado and brought books of Polaroids and photos of him on the ship. And so they had their 50th wedding vow renewal
Wow, that's so cool.
on the dash deck. And then we had another wedding, and it's turned out to be great friends with the couple, in that they met in the Army, in that her groom, husband to be, served in Afghanistan at the beginning of the conflict, and her son served in the same unit at the end of the conflict. The unfortunate thing is the reason they met is her son was killed in action. So they decided, they called me up, and I didn't know them from anybody. Said, hey, is there a way we could have our wedding on the Orlick? We were thinking of having it in a military spot. He was in the Army, but Navy is still military. And we said, of course we can. And so she had her maids of honor, but also 3 men from her son's unit were there. And he had his groomsmen and men from his unit. And it was wasn't a dry eye, but they had the ceremony on the torpedo deck, and then they had the reception on the dash deck, which is the helicopter deck, and they threw down. It was so much fun. It was so joyous, and we've become really good friends. And turns out that one of them works with a friend of mine in a big insurance company in town, and so they're just they've just become great friends, and they come by and they volunteer on the ship and all that kind of stuff, and just have a great time, Well,
I love the way you keep a youthful, exuberant heart through all of your projects. I mean, it seems like you have got the heart of an 8-year-old and the mind of a wise old sage.
Yeah.
And we benefit greatly.
Yeah, well, the next project, we took over the Icebreakers restaurant on January 1st. It was a great day, in that we had a 900-person party for New Year's Eve on the Orlick. So I got home at 4 a.m, slept for 3 hours, and then went to the igloo at 8 a.m. Because I figured they'd be closed on New Year's Day, and they're like, "Oh no, Jim, this is one of our biggest days because kids are at home," and so we can fit 600 people ice skating there, and so we had 700 people there on New Year's Day.
Really?
And so
I would never think.
we went and opened up the restaurant, you know, at 11 o'clock that day. There's a cafe that opens earlier, and then the restaurant opens for lunch. And been there every day, you know, since the first. And we close tomorrow to redo all the computer systems with the new menu that launches on Friday.
There's so many new places.
We're bringing some fuel favorites into there.
Chicken salad sandwich.
Maybe there might be a cranberry dill chicken salad somewhere, but
I don't eat chicken, but
we've added some healthy options. A really good friend of mine, he or she and her husband are investors in the team, and you would never expect this former Jaguar player to be a vegetarian, but it just proves that you can have arms the size of my thighs on a vegetarian diet. They don't eat fish, they're vegetarian. And they were always upset that there were no vegetarian options at this restaurant outside of like Cobb salad, hold the ham and chicken or whatever's on a Cobb salad. But we're having a really great vegan Venezuelan arepe entree.
I'm sold.
And
that's me.
We'll be there.
And you know, we're it's like
we're into hockey now apparently.
What like you know, like I will like if I lived in India, I could be a vegetarian. If I lived in Asia, I could be a vegetarian. I can't be one here because we just don't know how to season foods without whatever, and that's me proselytizing. I'm sure I could be a vegetarian.
You're gonna like Alexandra's food. She's vegetarian.
Yeah,
so
but
vegan.
What my friends were telling me was like, they said, Jim, you're right, you get it, because like they had an Impossible Burger there, but if you're trying to not eat beef, why would you want to have something that tastes like
100%,
beef? You know, and so let's celebrate the fact that we like vegetables, and so let's celebrate this, and so
not have a menu that's just stripped down of whatever the other thing.
Right, and so like
or replaced. That smells or tastes or looks like.
Right, and so like you know, like I love when we were in Five Points. Well, I guess it was Hot Wok, and General Chow's tofu was the most amazing thing. It was just, wasn't trying to be chicken. It was just extra crispy, and it was great. I'm salivating now. But like we're going to have vegetarian items that celebrate the fact that they're vegetarian, not that it's a vegetarian version of a hamburger. Like tofurkey. Why would you want to eat tofu that's been flavored with something to make it taste like meat? I mean, maybe that's what you do to get your kids off of meat onto something. But I mean, and this is me being a, you know, thank you for coming to my TED Talk, you know, speech on what people should do. But the way I look at it is like, you know, we're having this really wonderful soup. Latin-based that my chef has come up with. I've hired Evan Getsky, who's formerly of Smoked Meat Militia, but he started Spraga down here. He's done a lot of things. He's worked in Michelin star restaurants in Chicago and other places. I said, hey, I need someone that can take a sports bar where everything is fried and keep the boneless chicken wings and keep the wings on the menu and keep a hamburger, but let's add some tasty, healthier options. And so like we had a party a couple Thursdays ago, and we smoked 20 briskets for it, you know, because there was 650 people was there for dinner. And
big sports bar.
It's
huge.
The building is 2.37 acres under roof. It's huge.
So including the rinks.
Yeah, the rinks, and then multiple locker rooms, and then there's a place for the team.
It's massive.
Yeah, so like the team practices there. And so we have a locker room for the team. We have a locker room for an away team. We have a sports medicine area. I think it's probably massage table or, or chiropractic. And we have everything to do tournaments. And people are playing, like we have adult leagues that they play until midnight. They come out at 11 o'clock to get an hour on the ice. And then it opens up at 6 in the morning. We have, it's a training facility for kids who want to be hockey athletes, also for figure skating. And the parents are serious that that their kids are athletes. And, obviously you'll look at a hockey and think, yes, but figure skating is an amazing amount of work. It isn't like, you just go out there and you ballroom dance or whatever, but dancing is also a sport. It takes a lot of effort. And one of the hockey moms who I'm misrepresented as hockey mom says, no, Jim, I am a figure skate mom. And that's my daughter out there. And when I look over there, I'm a hockey mom for when my son is playing, but right now I'm a figure skate mom. And she told me, like, my daughter's an athlete and she's here 5 days a week for 3 hours. And at the end of it, I just can't give her boneless chicken wings and fries. That's just can't do it. And I said, what would you like? And she said, like a keto rice bowl, where like brown rice, some grilled vegetables, and a protein. And it'll be healthier, and I will buy it 5 days a week. So we're rolling stuff out like that, where, like, if it's in front of me, I'll eat fried food. It's yummy. But I also will put a killing on a rice thing, or not, like, and if you're getting away with the carbs, like, we have this thing that I thought was the most ridiculous thing, and I was judging it, and it turns out it's one of my favorite dishes. It's just lightly breaded cauliflower. So they call them cauliflower wings. I call them cauliflower chips, but like, it's really good. It's like, back in the Fuel days, we made a mistake and created one of the most popular things. It was like zucchini fries, where we just sliced, like big ass zucchinis, rolled them in breadcrumbs and fried them, and they were good. It was like, it was a mistake. But
I think you're getting us all hungry for lunch.
There we go. Yeah. But, that's what's occupying a lot of my time now, is the ship, the USS Orlick, the icebreakers at the Igloo, going to the games. They're so much fun. And Manifest. And then I'll leave it on, I think some friends and I just bought a country club golf course.
Oh my goodness. There weren't enough projects.
I'm going to go visit tomorrow because someone said yes for me and said, hey, you'd like to do this, wouldn't you?
Oh my goodness.
But what's interesting about this is they all feed together.
Right. They must. Otherwise, there's no way you can.
It's like, I love
the Jim Webb entertainment compound.
Well, I love looking at it as, all right, no offense, but like, there's 16 taps at the Igloo, and it was all national brands, and the only local brand that was on there was because they had a sponsorship deal or partnership where they were partners in the team, so they brought in 2 local beers. Turns out it's one of my favorite 2 local beers, but they were the only local on there, and so I've upset the late night guys that are upset that I don't have Mick Ultra on draft anymore, but I have Bold City Duval Light, which is calorically similar, and it supports really great friends of mine at Bold City. Like, it's like when they started, like, Fuel was one of their first customers. So I've worked with them. I guess that would have been in 2007 timeframe. So 17 years I've been working with them.
Yeah.
And I know the Mick Ultra is made here in Jacksonville, but I don't really think that the Anheuser-Busch mega brewery up by the airport counts as local. I mean, 20% of Bud Light in the country is made in Jacksonville.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yep. I mean, it's local. They're great people. I have Mick Ultra in cans. I really want the taps to be local. And when we have parties on the ship, we bring in local beer, and when we do parties, we are just so hyper focused local because that's who we are. And it's and then people ask, well, like Sweetwater 420, well, that's not local, but that's on draft. I said, yeah, but it's local somewhere.
I'm with you in the same boat though, because Burger King is also local, but it doesn't mean I'm going to go eat at Burger King. I'm going to support some of the local chefs, and people that I know, that hire people that I know. And that's what I think has made this area great, is that this, that's what you kicked off. You started with a group of people who had this mindset. And I think that it's amazing to see that it's become what it is today, which is a destination that people travel to. My friends, even from New York and other places, when they come, they go, oh, I had no idea. Like, I know, unless you come and eat the food here, you'll just think it's a local person raving about their local spots.
Sure, it's like there are these AI-generated spam bot articles that pop up every now and again, and one of them I saw was what to do on the weekend in downtown Jacksonville. And it was all go to the beach or go to the town center. And I was like, someone from Jacksonville didn't write this. And what upset me is like someone in Jacksonville found it and put it out on the website. Look at this great thing about Jacksonville. And I know they didn't read it. And I was like, if I'm going to complain, I'm going to create a solution. So I haven't complained publicly yet about it, but I'm going to write a little thing like what to do in Jacksonville, and it's not going to include going to the mall. It's going to be, okay, if you want to take an Uber from the airport and stay at the Marriott downtown, what can you do without a car? And there's a lot you can do. Like you can walk on the Riverwalk, and if it's on a Saturday, you can go to Ram. You can go to the Cummer. If you go the other way, you can go to the Ship. You can walk down to Manifest. It's not far. It's like, we're this huge town that has to park in front of where we're going. And if there's not a space in front of where we're going, they're, nope, not doing it today. They'll park at the town center and walk 5 miles. But in defense of that, they're walking past something. And so when we go back to placemaking, you don't want to walk down a street that doesn't have something going on. It's kind of off-putting. And what you really want is you want something happening on both sides of the street, because then it's pedestrian friendly, because you can see that places are open. You're not walking past a block of nothing. And that's a real problem downtown. Homeless is not a problem downtown. It exists. It's being dealt with in a humane and caring way. What's the problem is that there are only a couple blocks that are activated on both sides. Or there are tons of blocks that don't have anything on it between places that exist.
That's right, because that's the magic of 5 Points, King Street, the Avondale shops. And that's what sustained them for a long time. But even they can be expanded.
And what people were telling me, no, you're lying, Jim. I said, okay, tell me a block that is activated on both sides downtown, because I can tell you the ones that are. But for example, like if you park in the parking garage for the library, there's no street activation on either side of it.
That's true.
What it is they have the book drop-offs, and they now have DVI in there, but for years there was nothing on that. If you get to Hemming or James Weldon Johnson Park, everything is activated on the park side. But once you get off, you walk down the side of the library, and there's nothing to Main Street other than here and again, barber's shop and a parking garage. But to get to Indochine and Burrito Gallery and the Elbow, you got to walk through areas that don't have anything going on. The Volstead is doing great because it has the restaurants across the street from it on Adams Street. Florida Theater is across the street from Dos Gatos. And then the restaurants down from the Florida Theater have stuff going on. Burrito Gallery and Indochine have the old library is now the Jesse, so that's activated on both sides of the street. But you walk past all these places that are just dead, and I totally disagree with making streets two-way, but people can't navigate with one-way streets. I just think it's going to be a cluster, but people smarter than me say if they're two-way streets, then you'll activate both sides because it'll be better. But
I can't wait to have no-way streets. I'm hoping that as this density continues, we can get more blocked off, like St. Augustine and other
Sure.
areas.
Well, Terry, who used to run, Terry Lawrence used to run DVI. She retired, and Jake Gordon runs it now. Amazing people. Both of them are amazing. Jake is, if you think I have energy, Jake is a firebrand of energy. But Terry and I walked from Hemming Park down to when the landing was still there, and it's easily doable. It's like 4 or 5 blocks.
I walk all of it too, but I get what you're saying,
but
that if it's activated on both sides, then you've got an event. It's a strip.
Right. But what we wanted to do, which I hope in my lifetime happens, is we wanted to close Laura Street from the park down to the landing and have it as a pedestrian thing and have little pop-ups, like a little kiosk that just sells popcorn or a little hot dog cart, and then have tables everywhere so that you could walk from the oldest park in Jacksonville down to the riverfront. And then from there along the river walks. And people were losing their minds. They're like, how are we going to get around downtown if Laura Street's closed? And I'm like, here, let me just show you something in Louisville, which is denser than Jacksonville, where they closed off and did this exact thing. It made it pedestrian friendly. And they put a slanted glass roof across a block and had a whatever live music venue, and then they had shops and all that, but it's all open air. Somehow people found a way to get around that in their cars, and they usually, what they do is they park in a garage or they park whatever, and they walk there. And like, all of this stuff, it can be made pedestrian friendly and safe. And we have tons of parking. We have tons of garages. We have tons of places to park. We have a reasonable people mover that runs around. When I was with Hemming Park, I would take it to go to lunch at BB's, and people are like, what are you talking about? Like, yeah, it goes over there. It goes to the King Street garage. You walk 2 blocks, you're at BB's, and then you take it back. You don't have to move your car. Once you park your car, you then walk around.
And is it free?
People Mover is free.
I think the People Mover is free, but you need bus tickets for just the buses that are on the ground.
Right.
And they drop off at the same spot. So a lot of people will take the bus from one location to the People Mover.
Sure, and it's just like once you're downtown, you can do something all day. Like if you're working, you can go to Hemming Park. You can get from 2 to 3 food trucks. You can go to Chamblin's for a funky cafe. You can go to Setland. They're all things that you can do within walking distance of any of the People Movers. And people complain about them that they don't go anywhere, but if you're already downtown, they're really useful.
Right, yeah.
I mean, and you can take it, and if you're staying downtown, you can walk over the Main Street Bridge to go to Mosh, or you can take the People Mover and then walk back.
I just like
So we look forward to coming by and seeing icebreakers.
And the ship.
And also the Orlick.
Sure.
The Orlick is also going to be hot on my list as well.
Yeah. Let me know. We'll give you a tour.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, Jim.
We'll get you out on skates.
I like the skate. I've actually ice skated a long time ago. Yeah, I'm not good at it, but I like doing it.
My mom would like it. She was born and raised in Siberia.
Okay.
She should be a decent skater, I guess. But I don't know when was her last time when she ice
Yeah.
skated.
So maybe we'll get some food and
Sure.
make
Sure.
a plan.
Yeah.
Well,
But thank you very much for coming on the
yeah.
show today, Jim, and
My pleasure.
sharing with you with us a lot of these.
Yeah, it brought back a lot of memories. You know,
Very
it tells me
inspiring.
that my brain is still working.
Yeah,
So,
we'll have to probably again have you back on and show maybe some of the things that you're doing at
Sure.
Icebreakers.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
even do a show from there.
oh yeah, we can do that.
oh, yes,
got
on
a-
the ship.
Yeah, we can do
on
that.
the Orlick as well.
Yeah. Glad to have you on either. And Manifest will be reopening next week, and we can,
Yeah,
you know,
that's another.
go there as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Anything else
Thank
you want to share before we sign off for the day?
No, we're good.
Yeah,
We're good.
well, we'll just share the links to all of the.
Okay,
That's
so
right.
it's
Down below we'll have
yeah, so it'll be manifestdistilling.com, jacksnavalmuseum.org,
.org. Okay.
and then we don't have a website for the icebreakers yet.
all
Okay,
right.
can be just mentioned in social media.
Yeah, you can mention all this on
Okay.
social media.
Yeah, and I'll put them in the links down below. So
Yeah.
check them out. And if you're in Jacksonville, Florida,
communityfirstigloo.com.
absolutely, what you'll like to see them.
Thanks.
Bye.